Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I'd like you all to give a warm welcome to our main speaker, Patti.
Thank you. I'm Patti. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm grateful to be sober and to be in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And to Jack and any other newcomer who may not have identified themselves, I'd like to say welcome home. We've been waiting for you. I want to thank Rita for inviting me to share here tonight. I want to thank the state of California for giving me back the right to drive in the state of California so that I could be here this evening. I want you to know that I've never been to a Pop Warner football game. I have never seen my father pass up a drink. And yet I made the same vow Patrick did. I would never say no to a drink. I think probably most of us in this room made that vow, never say no to a drink. Patrick reminds me of one of those guys in the bars that was happy. The kind of guy guys that would irritate me, and the book talks, there's a place in the book where it talks about we became dangerously, even disgustingly antisocial. I didn't become that way, start out that way, and guys like Patrick, I used to put the bar stool over their head, you know, because they were just too happy. And the book talks about we are people who normally would not mix. And if you look around the room, I mean, how many of these folks would you have drank with? Not me. I'm supposed to share with you in a general way what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like now. I need to tell you, my sponsor always gives me a very simple direction before I do this. She always just says, tell them your name and tell them the truth. I've told you my name. I'm not so sure I'm going to tell you the truth. What I'm going to tell you is my perspective of what it used to be like. I did not know when I was out there practicing, which I think is really a bizarre word. I needed no practice. I practiced a lot, but I didn't need a minute of it. I was a really good drinker. I was really good at what I did. But I didn't know when I was out there that I was going to end up here tonight. I didn't know that I was going to come to Alcoholics Anonymous and be expected to share with you what it used to be like. So I never paid much attention to my life. If I would have known I was going to be here, I would have taken notes while I was out there. I'm sure I would have done some things differently if I would have known that I was going to have to come report. But I didn't know I was going to end up here. I don't think any of us really planned this place for ourselves in life. So I just didn't pay a lot of attention. A lot of what I'm going to share with you is documented. I can go back and look it up and verify it. Most of what I'm going to share with you in regards to what it used to be like was reported to me by other people. And I just simply have to believe they were telling me the truth. I don't have a lot of reason to doubt that what they told me my life used to be like is truly what it used to be like. I always get a little nervous when somebody's sharing at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous when they start out with I was born, especially if they're old. You know, because then you figure you're going to have to listen for a long time. So I'm going to start out tonight by telling you I was born February 3rd, 1949 in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, and that doesn't mean anything to anybody in this room except for me. It's very vital to me because up until that moment everything in my life was fine. Up until the moment of birth I had exactly what I needed. Everything I needed was right, and it was exactly the right kind. From the moment I was born until just recently in Alcoholics Anonymous, it has never been enough. and it's never been the right kind. It seems to me like my life has been this search for more. Whatever it is, I just want more. And I'm still the kind of person I can use a year's supply of anything in a week. It just has never been enough. And I guess when I do this, I should identify, and I should just say I'm Patti and I'm a pig. Because I drank, smoked, shot, snorted, shoved, crammed, rammed anything into me that made me feel different than how I felt. But alcohol is my drug of choice. I love alcohol. I love everything about alcohol. I love the way it looks, the way it sounds, the way it smells. I love alcohol. And what drug of choice means for me is if there's a bottle of Jack Daniels, here's some marijuana, some cocaine, some Valium, some Quaaludes, some stuff. Drug of choice means I drink the Jack Daniels first, and then I do everything else. And I'm the person that came to your house and ate and drank everything in your bathroom. I mean, drank a lot of mouthwash. I drank a lot of perfume. Taboo became my after-dinner drink of choice. And they told me when I was new, if I didn't want to slip, don't go where it's slippery. I still buy perfume and spray bottles. I just don't trust myself. Somebody asked me once, they said, God, how could you stand the taste? Well, I didn't particularly like the taste of gin, but I drank it too. So it wasn't about taste, it was about what it did. And alcohol apparently did something for me that it doesn't do for a lot of other people. And I never really knew, I didn't pay much attention to that, I guess. I can tell you that I spent most of my life building walls to keep you out. I don't know if I didn't like people. I don't think I did, but I don't think that was the primary reason. I think I was busy building walls to keep you out because it seems to me like I was being hurt all the time. It seems to me like people were hurting me all the time. I was always being disappointed. I was always being let down. I was always being hurt, and I just didn't want to be hurt anymore. So I built these walls to keep you out, and the walls worked really well. They kept you out. What I never realized about those walls is they made me a prisoner inside. I lived in isolation and loneliness, and I didn't have a clue. And alcohol, I believe I had my first drink. I believe it was God's grace. I believe that God allowed me to find alcohol because I don't think a human being can live in that kind of isolation and loneliness. And I found alcohol when I was 13. I'm sorry I waited that long, but I grew up in an alcoholic home. My father's a drunk, and I didn't know it was alcohol. I just thought my dad was weird. I don't remember ever making any vows to never drink, and at the same time, I don't remember ever thinking about drinking. I don't remember planning to ever drink or not drink. I just never thought about alcohol. And yet when I was 13 years old, I was on a camping trip with a group of girls, and somehow there was a bottle of vodka in my pillowcase when I got into the tent that night. And I didn't have any idea what alcohol would do to me or for me. I didn't have any illusions about alcohol. I didn't know much about what it was or what it would do, but I remember pulling the bottle out of the pillowcase, and I remember being excited about having it. And I asked anybody if they wanted any of it, and they didn't. And the reason they gave me for not wanting it was all we had to mix with it was grape soda and root beer. And I said, well, so what? And they took the top off, and I drank half the bottle, and I looked around, and nothing had changed, and nothing had gotten different, so I drank the second half of the bottle. And that was my first drink of alcohol, and absolutely nothing happened to me. And I never had resentments until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I never had resentments out there, and one of my early resentments here was I heard you talk about your first drink, and I'd hear you talk about taking the drink, and you could feel the warmth in your mouth, and you could feel that warmth go down your throat, and you could feel it go down to your stomach, and it hit your stomach and exploded, went to your fingernails, your toenails, your pimples fell off, you grew a couple inches, you lost a few pounds, you became Prince Charles and Lady Di, and wonderful things happened to you. And I had my first drink of alcohol, and absolutely nothing happened to me for about 15 minutes. And at the end of the 15 minutes, the only thing that happened to me was I had to go to the bathroom, and it's my belief today that if you drank a quart of anything, you'd have to go to the bathroom in about 15 minutes. And we were camped at the beach. I got out of the tent. I remember shuffling to the outhouse and went in and went to the bathroom, and when I got done and went to get up, I realized I was absolutely, totally, 100% paralyzed to the toilet seat. I couldn't blink. I didn't feel my heart beating. And I was overcome with a sense of fear. And of course, the fear was that somebody else was going to have to come use that outhouse And there I was, paralyzed to the toilet seat. Now, later in my drinking, I was to discover that two people can use the same toilet at the same time. But the second person has to be very careful about what they're doing. But you don't know that at 13, so I sat there, and I guess it was my first formal meditation because I somehow intuitively knew that the body was made up of energy. And as I sat there, I realized if I could get that energy all into one place, that I would be okay. So I sat there and I gathered my energy. And when it seemed to be all in one central location, I just sort of fell off the toilet, out the door, into the sand, and started crawling back to the tent. Now, since coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, I've discovered my entire problem that night was my attitude. If my attitude would have been right, I could have had a fantasy. I was in Marines, I was being dive bombed as I was trying to get back to safety, and it could have been a good, wonderful experience. In my own defense, I need to tell you, my pants were still down at my ankles. I'd started to get sick. I couldn't quite get through it. I couldn't get around it. And I think under those circumstances, a little difficult to have a good attitude. I did somehow manage to get back to the tent. I fell in and I passed out. When I came to in the morning, I realized nobody was in the tent with me, and I couldn't figure out where they went till my eyes cleared enough that I realized I'd been sick all night long. I'd hit the side of the tent, the floor of the tent, so I hadn't missed a square inch, and I didn't want to be in there either, so I got out of the tent, and that was my first drink of alcohol, and it was the most wonderful, incredible, marvelous, fabulous, spiritual, magnificent experience I'd ever had. And it must have been because I put some amount of alcohol into my body on a daily basis from that day until the day I came to the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't always get drunk, but I put some amount of alcohol into my body on a daily basis, and I thought I drank as I wanted to drink. I didn't know that I didn't have a choice. I didn't know that I'd put alcohol into an alcoholic body, and from that day on, I had no choice. I thought I drank as I wanted to drink. I graduated from high school and went to college. I did very well in college. I graduated with a 3.8 grade point average, a chronic, hopeless, helpless alcoholic, only I don't have a clue. I think I drank because I wanted to drink. I stayed in college and took classes for a master's degree because I'm the kind of person, if I'm doing something well, I want to keep doing it, and I seem to do school well. I left college when I had taken all the classes San Diego State had to offer, and I truly believe that's why I was leaving. It did not occur to me I might be leaving because I had one more drunk driving assault charge pending. Another resentment I've gotten in Alcoholics Anonymous, I found I can get arrested for a single charge of drunk driving. I never knew that. I always got arrested for drunk driving assault, and it had something to do with how I got out of the car. And I was, I'd had a number of them. I don't know, fortunate or unfortunate, I don't know. It just was. It was during the time when you could pay an attorney $1,000 and you didn't even have to go to court. Attorney would go to court and do whatever they did, and you didn't even have to show up. I had two pending at the same time, and my attorney was a little nervous. And it's not a good sign when your attorney's a little nervous. And a guy drank in the bar with me, worked for a mortuary, and we were, talking. He was probably the lowliest guy in the bar. Everybody else was CEOs and brain surgeons, and, he just worked at a mortuary. And we were chatting one night, and we came up with this plan, and we went over to where he worked, and we forged a death certificate, and we sent it to court, because the judge can't expect you to come to court if you're dead. Called my attorney, told him he didn't need to worry about the case anymore, and it worked really well for about a month till I got arrested again, and then I'm standing in court. I'm standing in court, and the judge, they're supposed to be smart. I mean, they go to college, they go to law school. I mean, they're supposed to be smart. He asked me the stupidest question. He looked at me and he said, "Miss Ochoa, tell me, how is it a dead person standing in my court?" I just kind of shrugged my shoulders. I said, "I don't know, bad luck." And that was the story of my drinking. It was just bad luck. It was circumstances and conditions. It was bad breaks. It was the cops. It was my boss. It was stuff. It never occurred to me it had anything to do with alcohol. Never once occurred to me it had a thing to do with alcohol. I left college and went immediately into the profession of my choice. The only thing I have ever wanted to be since I was in the 4th grade was a writer. And I went into the profession of my choice. I rose very quickly to the top. And I drank myself out of that profession. Now, of course, I didn't know that. I thought I retired. I was 25, and I always figure if you're going to retire, you should do it when you're young and you can, enjoy it. And I was sober for a while in Alcoholics Anonymous before I realized I was unemployed and unemployable. That alcohol had become my mother, my father, my God, my lover, my friend, my companion, my support, and at some point it had turned. And it began to strip me of self-esteem, self-worth, integrity, decency, all the things we have going for us as human beings. And by the time I got here, it had taken it all. Everything in my life I had given up for one more drink. For one more drink, I gave up everything, and I gave up the only thing I've ever wanted to do for a living since I was in the 4th grade. Alcohol took it all. And yet when I walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, I couldn't figure out why I was here. I went to court. I got picked up one more time for drunk driving assault. Orange County Sheriff has absolutely no sense of humor. I'm the kind of, you know him. I'm the kind of person, I get arrested, I get released from jail, I get the arrest report and I read it. I find out where I made my mistake, I practice that part so that next time I'll get that part right, and I always knew there'd be a next time, so I had practiced field sobriety test a lot. I was really, really good at field sobriety test, and on the last one, I was doing a great job. I'd have given myself an A+. It was an excellent job, and at the end of the test, the officer asked me to say the ABCs backwards. Well, the time before I had responded with, well, I can't even do that sober. Well, then I had just confessed and they took me off to jail. So on the last time when he asked me to say the ABCs backwards, I said, okay, and I turned around. See, y'all think it's funny. He didn't think it was funny. He cuffed me and took me to Orange County Jail and put me in a cell with criminals, and I knew I didn't belong there. Tried to organize a prison break. Explained the plan. I explained it carefully and slowly to the criminals, and it was simple. We're going to take our coffee cups, we're going to bang them on the bars, we're going to make a lot of noise. When the marshal comes to see what's going on, I'm going to throw my arm around the bars, get her keys, and we're going to get out of here. And I heard something I was to hear in Alcoholics Anonymous. One of those criminals looked at me and she said, why don't you sit down and shut up? And I said, fine, then y'all stay, but I'm getting out. And I was going like a mad woman on those bars. There's a couple problems with styrofoam cups. The first one is they don't make a lot of noise. Second one is the bars have a tendency to eat them up. And when the bars ate it up and it got to my knuckles and it got painful, I sat down and I shut up. And I went to court on that charge. I was 26 years old. I was drunk in court that morning. It's the only way I went to court. It's the only way I went to school, to work, to the laundromat, to the grocery store, to church, to the library. It's the only way I did anything. And I stood there drunk that morning because of my past record being sentenced to 10 years in prison. I have a son as a direct result of my alcoholism. I never wanted to be a mother. I found out that is not adequate birth control. My son was 8 months old at the time. I didn't like him. He didn't do anything. He wept and he cried. He wouldn't go get a job. He interfered with my life a lot, and I really didn't like him. I'm not proud of that, but that's how it was. But I was willing to use him that morning, and I told the judge he couldn't put me in jail because I was a single parent, and I was self-supporting through my own contributions, and I had this 8-month-old baby to take care of. And he told me to put my son in a foster home because I was an unfit mother, and he began to sentence me. And in the middle of sentencing me, the expression on his face changed, the tone of his voice got different, and I knew he was as surprised at what he was saying as I was at what I was hearing. Because in the middle of it, he looked at me and he said, I know this won't work for you, but I'm going to offer you one more chance. And he offered me an alternative, and part of that alternative was meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I wish I could tell you that I took the alternative. I came here, I looked at the 12 steps of the recovery, knew they were the solution to the problems of my life, worked them all in the first week, and skyrocketed to recovery. But that's not my story. I drank for 3 more months. In retrospect, I can tell you that I drank with a sense of urgency and a desperation that I had never known. I didn't drink a greater quantity. Physically, it would have been impossible to drink a greater quantity of alcohol. But I drank with a sense of urgency and a desperation that I had never known. And on October 4th, 1975, the day before I was to go back to court to tell the judge what it was I was doing with the alternative he gave me, on that day I came to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't know what A&A was. I thought it was something like the PTA or Parents Without Partners, and a lot of days it is, but I didn't have any idea what you people were going to do to me or for me. As far as I know, I had never heard the words Alcoholics Anonymous. As far as I know, I had never heard the word alcoholic. And it was a Sunday night and it was a speaker meeting. And I heard two things in that meeting. I heard we don't drink between meetings. I got a whiplash looking around the room. I didn't see anybody drinking during the meeting. And I thought, if you don't drink during the meeting and you don't drink between the meetings, when do you drink? This bothered me a little. The other thing that I heard was that the answers were in the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. So after the meeting, I stole the book. I mean, God knows I need to have the answers. I can't tell you how irritated I was when I got home. Not only could I not find the answers in that book, I couldn't even find the questions. And I thought, oh dear God, I've stolen the wrong book. I'm going to have to go back and get the right one. And that's what brought me back to my second meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I came back to get the answer book. And I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters what brings you back. I think what's important is that you come back. My second meeting was a Wednesday night. It was a small discussion meeting. And in that meeting, I heard, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it. And I looked around the room, and I looked around the room, and I looked around the room, and I could not figure out what it was you had that was so hot that I should be willing to go to any length to get it. Some of you had nice jewelry. If you stood next to me during the Lord's Prayer, if your rings were loose, they were mine. Some of you have nice cars. I have a record for Grand Theft Auto. I know how to get those. Some of you had nice spouses. We all know how to get those. I couldn't figure out what it was you had. And then I saw him. And I truly believe there's a hymn for each of us. This guy was a skinny little fellow. He was bald-headed. He wore baggy pants and a thin belt. He had tennis shoes on with no shoelaces, but the holes were there where they should have been. And he nodded out during the meeting. And I thought, if I have to do this thing and not drink, I want to do it his way. So I found out where he worked, and the next day I snuck down to his office, and I said, Dick, I have to do this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous to stay out of jail, and I don't know how to do it. And he told me if I would go to meetings and read the book and talk to other alcoholics and not drink, so I'll guarantee you won't get drunk. If you don't get drunk, your life will get different. And I'm grateful he told it to me that way. He didn't tell me my life would get better. He didn't tell me my family life would get better, my relationships would get better, my finances would get better, my job situation would get better, my sex life would get better. He didn't tell me any of it would get better, and I'm grateful, because none of it has. A little hope for the newcomer, but it's all gotten different. As I stand here tonight, I can tell you from the top of my head to the tip of my toes, I have never had it so good. You see, I don't know what good from bad is for me. If I'm going through something I think is good for me, it generally turns out to be bad for me. And if I'm going through something I think is bad for me, it generally turns out to be good for me. And I don't know good from bad for me. I've gone through times in my sobriety when my entire life was falling apart. I've gone through times when everything I have worked for or toward has been taken away from me. I've lost jobs, I've lost relationships, I've just had stuff just taken away. And it looked to me as if God had brought me this far and was dropping me on my butt. I didn't drink, and I didn't die, and I got far enough beyond it to, in retrospect, be able to look back and see that every time I have thought my life was falling apart, what was really happening, it was falling together. And it had to be exactly the way it was in order for God to move me to where it was He'd have me to be. So I don't know good from bad for me. I don't know falling apart for me, but I know what different is. And every area of my life is different than it was the day I walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've never had it so good. All I came here for was to stay out of jail. That's all I wanted out of this deal. And I've gotten so much more. Beyond my wildest imagination, my life has been filled. Beyond my wildest imaginations with things I couldn't have even thought to hope for or to ask for. And I believed that old man. I don't know why I hadn't believed another human being in a very long time, but I believed him. And I already had the book, so every night I'd open it to chapter 3 and I'd read the line that says, most of us are unwilling to admit we're real alcoholics. I'd say amen and close the book, and that was reading the book. And my little court program said I had to go to 2 meetings a week. I thought that was really obsessive, but I went to the 2 meetings. I went to the 2 meetings a week that my court program said I had to go to. I'd go down to the Canyon Club in Laguna Beach where they have AA meetings. I'd have a cup of coffee on the way out. I'd say hi, Jim, to the manager. He'd say hi, Patti. And that was talking to another alcoholic. And the only thing I did right is I didn't drink and I didn't use. And for me, it took 8.5 months of not drinking to get far enough away from my last drink to see the evidence of my alcoholism. You all saw it when I walked in. It was piled this high. You all saw it when I came in, but you gave me the dignity to do what I had to do for as long as I had to do it, until I could get far enough away from my last drink to see the evidence of my alcoholism. And at 8.5 months, I took the first step of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. I admitted I was powerless over alcohol and that my life had become unmanageable. Whenever I do battle with alcohol, I lose, whether I'm fighting it because I'm drinking it or I'm fighting it because you're drinking it. Whenever I get into the ring with alcohol, I lose. When I drink alcohol, I'm damned to continue to drink it. I have no choice. Whenever I do battle with alcohol, I'm powerless. I have no choice. And my life had become unmanageable. Every area of my life was fueled by alcohol. The successes and the failures, every area of my life was fueled by alcohol. I almost died in Alcoholics Anonymous because I told you I was too smart to be an alcoholic. Nobody with a 3.8 grade point average and could possibly be an alcoholic. And alcohol fueled my education. I told you that I was too successful to be an alcoholic. I told you about the big oak desk I sat behind. I told you about the trophies in the case. I told you about the plaques on the wall. And I was in the newspaper business, and we were a community paper, and we often gave awards. And because God had given me a gift, we often received awards. And I didn't tell you about the times I would come to behind a podium, much like this, in a room full of people, holding an award, not knowing if I was giving it or receiving it. And alcohol fueled all those successes. Every area of my life was fueled by alcohol, and when it turned, it began to take it all. And by the time I got here, alcohol had taken it all. Every area of my life, where I lived, where I'd worked, the people I'd run with, everything in my life was controlled by alcohol. My life had become unmanageable. And for me, it took 8.5 months of not drinking to get far enough away from my last drink to see the evidence. And I wasn't a very polite newcomer. I wasn't the newcomer that you were rushing up to, handing your phone number. You'd come up to me, I'd try to take a swing at you, I'd throw my coffee at you, I'd spit on you. Some guy shared something, pissed me off, I jumped him after the meeting, I was beating his head into the concrete floor. He didn't even say it to me, just shared it, I took it personally. And you never told me I had to leave. All you ever said to me was keep coming back, and I'd wave my court card in your face, I'd tell you didn't have a choice. And I heard the traditions read one time, and I heard tradition 3, and it said the only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. I said, that's it, I don't have a desire to stop drinking. I don't want to not drink, I want to drink. And an old timer grabbed me and he said, look, there's a judge in South Orange County Court. He has a desire for you to stop drinking. And in your case, we're going to let that be enough. And so I stayed on. So I don't think it matters whose desire you stay on. As long as you stay, as long as you don't drink. It doesn't matter whose desire you're working off of. And God loved the people in Alcoholics Anonymous when I walked through the door, because it gave me the dignity to do what I had to do for as long as I had to do it. The only thing I knew for sure was there was a volcano inside of me, and when that volcano went off, I had to do something. When that volcano went off, I wanted to see blood, preferably yours. When that volcano went off, I had no choice. And a guy told me one time, he said, Patti, when that volcano goes off, he said, just put your hands in your pockets and don't touch another human being. And nobody had ever talked to me about the volcano before, but I started doing what he told me to do. I walked around with my hands in my pockets for a long time before I discovered that anger was a cover for a tremendous amount of fear. I was absolutely scared to death. I was afraid of you, I was afraid of life, I was afraid of me, and I had survived in places where you can't survive if you're afraid. And so I had early began to cover that fear with anger and began to act it out in violence, and that's what walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. And God bless the people that were here, that they knew the traditions, and they didn't throw me away. You never didn't tell me I couldn't come back. You just said, keep coming back no matter how much I abused you. I want to talk for a minute. Oh, I only have a minute. I want to talk for a minute about the steps, because for me that's what happened. What happened, there's no way to get from where I was to where I am except for the power and the magic of the 12 steps of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is just my experience, and if you disagree with it, talk to your sponsor after the meeting. For me, step 2, where it talks about sanity, for me is how I think. Every once in a while I hear us tell newcomers not to think, and I don't know how you do that. I think all the time. I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about something else. Then I start thinking about the fact that I'm thinking, then I start thinking I shouldn't be thinking what I'm thinking while I'm thinking what I'm thinking, and I start thinking how not to think what I'm thinking while I'm thinking what I shouldn't be thinking that I'm thinking. And I'll tell you what, I'm eternally grateful I don't have a loudspeaker on my head. so that everything I thought came barreling out. That would be truly humiliating, but I don't know how not to think. And what I came to believe in step 2 was that a power greater than myself would restore my thinking, that somehow my thinking would be in line with the rest of the world. I, too, was raised Catholic. I'm recovering quite nicely from it. I've stayed sober long enough to know it wasn't all the Catholic Church. I have a hearing problem. I have always had a hearing problem. It's not what you say, it's how I hear it. But what I heard the nuns say is I heard them say I was going to burn for just as long for thinking it as I was for doing it. And I've always been a kind of into action person, and I figure if I'm going to burn for thinking it, I'm going to get some enjoyment out of doing it. So everything I thought I did. I did some things I didn't even want to do, but I thought it, so I did it. What I came to believe was that I would be able to have a thought and not have to take an action on it, and I'm happy to report that's happened. I'm an alcoholic. I'll always be an alcoholic. Every once in a while I have a thought that a drink would be nice. When I have that thought, I clap. I say, thank you for your participation. I just go about whatever it is that I'm doing. And I don't have to take an action. I don't have to beat myself up for it. I've had one very major lust attack while I've been standing up here this evening. And so far, I haven't had to take an action on it. And that's what I came to believe. And for me, I came to believe the power greater than myself in step 2, for me, was not God. Because I'm a loner by nature. Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't change our natures, but it gives us the courage and strength to do the things we need to do in order to continue to recover. The most difficult thing for me to do is be here with you. Left to my own devices, I prefer to sit on my couch. Left to my own devices, give me a fishing pole and let me sit out there by myself. I love throwing and reeling. I don't like to catch much because... But I'm a loner by nature, and if you're a loner by nature, if I had come to believe God was going to restore me to sanity, I'd have sat on my couch. God would have come in, sprinkled me with sanity, gone off to wherever God hangs out, and that would have been the end of it. I would have never had to do another thing. So for me, I came to believe that the power greater than myself was the action of steps 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, that somehow through taking the action of the steps, my thinking would be in line with the rest of the world. And I'm happy to report that's happened. I had no trouble with step 3 when my back was against the wall. The pain was so great, it was do it or die, and I had no other choice. I looked at step 3 and saw that it said made a decision. I make 100 decisions a day. I'm really good at making decisions. I have a little difficulty taking an action to implement the decision. That'll give me some grief, but I have no problem making a decision. Then it occurred to me I'd turned my will and my life over the care of alcohol and drugs on a daily basis for 13 years. I've turned my will and my life over the care of people even less qualified than myself a number of times. I've turned my will and my life over the care of a lot of stuff. When the pain was so great it was do or to die and I had no other choice, it was a simple matter to make a decision to turn my will and my life over the care of God, and the decision I made did not become a reality for me until I worked steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That it was through taking the action, the steps, that the decision I made became a reality. And I'm happy to report that because my understanding of God changed over and over and over and over through the course of taking the action of the steps. Steps 4 for me, I'm a journalist by training, and I thought that writing a 4-step was for those of you who had no creative writing skills. Those of you who weren't writers probably needed to do this to brush up on your writing skills, but I wasn't going to do it, and I didn't do it until the pain of being with you was so great I knew I had to leave Alcoholics Anonymous. I was isolated and alone in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I felt different. I felt unique. I knew there was no sense sharing because you weren't going to understand. And I was leaving Alcoholics Anonymous because I couldn't stay here in that kind of pain. On my way out the door that night, it occurred to me, I thought, well, before you leave, why don't you do a 4-step? So I did it the way the book says to do it. I made the little columns. I wrote who I resented, which basically turned out to be everybody who breathed air that I thought should have been mine. They ended up on that list. What they've done to me, well, I wanted to tell you all my life what they did to me. How it affected me, well, no wonder I drank. If all these people did all these things to you that affected you this way, you'd have drank too. And in my zealousness in that book, I accidentally turned the page. And 2 pages after the diagram, hidden in the body of the text, it says, referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we looked at what our part was. Well, now it wasn't any fun anymore. But I did that with my resentments, my fears, and my relationships, and that was my 4-step. And when I finished it, I knew I belonged in Alcoholics Anonymous. I truly believe we all have exactly the same story. We just acted it out a little bit differently, but we all have exactly the same story. I thought step 5, I thought sharing it was for those of you who weren't raised Catholic. Those of us who are Catholic, we know about confession and we know it doesn't work. And I figured the rest of you could have that experience if you shared it with somebody. And so, of course, I didn't have to do it. I put my 4th step in the trunk of my car, and then I drove around with a sense of impending doom. And the fear was, as I'd be rear-ended on the freeway, my trunk would fly open, and my 4th step would be everywhere. And rather than do a 5th step, I just drove around that way for a very long time. And then I was visiting a friend of mine one night, and we were talking, and as we were talking, it occurred to me I was doing a 5th step, and I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. And I went to my car, and I got my 4th step, and I did my 5th step with her. And when I finished, she looked at me, and she said, Patti, one day the things you have listed as your greatest assets will become your greatest liabilities. And the things you have listed as your greatest liabilities will become your greatest assets. And I thought, oh, wonderful, I've just done a 5th step with a woman who's lost her last wingnut. I need to tell you the things I have always thought were my greatest assets. In Alcoholics Anonymous become my greatest liabilities. I'm a strong woman. I've always been a very strong woman. I was raised to know that if I needed something done, that I better do it. I couldn't depend on you or they or them. I didn't need you. If I couldn't do it, it didn't need to get done. That strength has always been an asset for me. In Alcoholics Anonymous, it becomes a liability because whenever I try to do anything by myself, I shortchange myself. Whenever I try to do anything alone, I shortchange myself. Whenever I ask one of you to take my hand and walk with me, new doors open and you add to my life. And that strength, which has always been an asset, here becomes a liability, and that happened in every area of my life. I'm going to show you how Alcoholics Anonymous works. About 15 minutes ago, I made a decision that it was way too hot up here to wear this jacket and I should take it off. 15 minutes later, I'm taking the action. That's about the immediate that we go from step 3 to step 4. Wait till I'm miserable enough and then take an action. The decision was not difficult. The decision came rather quickly. I went home from doing my 5th step, and I did steps 6 and 7 by mistake. I didn't mean to recover this quickly, but I accidentally, by coincidence, opened the book to the part in the big book about steps 6 and 7. It's very short, and I kind of got lulled into reading it. And when I became aware of what I was reading, I realized I was in the middle of the 7-step prayer. And when I became aware of what I was reading, I knew that I believed it. And the thing that it says in the book happened to me. I walked through the archway to freedom. I walked away from the person I have been all of my life to start to become the person God intended for me to be. And I truly believe that's the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. The miracle is we have an opportunity to walk away from the person we've been all of our life to start to become the person God intended for us to be. The best I've ever described myself, when I came here, I was an animal with latent human tendencies. That's what walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. And because the steps work and because you've been willing to share with me how to live life, I've become very kind, very loving, very gentle, very nurturing. Of course, now they're telling me it's codependency and I have to recover from it. But I love the person who I am. And I'm the person that I was the most afraid of all of my life. I'm the kind of person that I hated the most. Because I was most afraid of. And I love the person who I am today because the steps work and because you've been willing to share with me how to live life. Left to my own devices, I don't know how to live out there. Left to my own devices, I will continue to shortchange myself. So I come here for an hour and a half and you share with me how to live, and I have 22 and a half hours to live life to the fullest and beyond my wildest imagination. Step 8 and 9 for me are conventional ways of getting rid of conventional guilt. I was in a meeting one night, a woman was saying, I feel so guilty, I feel so guilty. I said, you feel guilty because you are guilty. I did a lot of things to a lot of people. I did a lot of things to a lot of people for one more drink. I did a lot of things to a lot of people for one more drink, for one more drink. I gave up a lot of things and I hurt a lot of people and I abused a lot of people for one more drink. And I felt guilty because I was guilty. And steps 8 and 9 allowed me to get right with you. I had never been right with you. In working steps 8 and 9, I got right with you, and in getting right with you, I got right with God, and I'd never been right with God in my entire life. And when I got right with God, I somehow got right with myself, and for the first time in my life, it was enough. And it was exactly the right kind. Now, that doesn't mean I don't want more. I told you I'm a pig. Greed, which used to be a liability, now becomes an asset, because I want what I have. But I look in your eyes and I see there's so much more available, and I want it all today. I don't want to shortchange myself. And so greed, which used to be a liability, becomes an asset because it brings me back day after day after day to Alcoholics Anonymous because I want it all. Steps 10, 11, and 12, I hear people talk about maintenance steps. I'm not sure what they're maintaining. Ground level is nice, but 10, 11, and 12 for me are the growth steps. They're the steps that allow me to continue to recover in Alcoholics Anonymous. They're the steps that give me the privilege to be here with you and listen to you share with me how to live life. And I kind of look at them like going to the May Company. And I go to the May Company, I go in on the first floor, but I want to shop on the second floor, and I'm basically lazy, so I go immediately to the escalator. I always go to the escalator that's coming down. You can get from the first floor to the second floor on the down escalator, but you got to keep moving. And that's what steps 10, 11, and 12 are. For me, they're the steps that keep me moving up the down escalator. If I stop using them, I don't hit ground right away, but I start going down. And if I don't start using them pretty quick, eventually I'm right back to where I was when I started. So they're the steps that keep me moving up the down escalator. Step 10 says, the process is powerful, keep using it. The process is incredible, keep using it. Keep taking inventory, keep sharing. Keep asking God to remove the defect. Keep making amends when necessary. The process is incredible, keep using it. Step 11, I'm a simple person. I get up in the morning and simply say, thy will be done. I'm so naive, I truly believe the rest of the day is God's business. My job is to not drink and to show up and live life to the fullest. The rest of it is his business. Who he puts in front of me, where he puts me is truly his business. I happen to be a formal meditator, but my best meditation happens in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I meditate essentially because I like the effect produced. I have to control and enjoy my meditation. I can only allow myself to formally meditate once a day. Left to my own devices, I'll sit all day long because I like the way that feels. My difficulty is being with you. But my best meditation comes in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is where I get my best answers. And step 12 is the greatest gift you have ever given me. The gift to turn a little bit of my dark, sleazy, disgusting past into the most shiny gem that I have to offer another alcoholic. If it'll work for me, it'll work for you. And that's what you've given me in step 12 is the privilege to share that message with another alcoholic. What you've given me in step 12 is the privilege to share a message that an old man who was sober longer than I'd been alive, which is why he nodded out in meetings. He had something inside that I didn't have a clue of what it was. Step 12 allows me to carry the message that he carried to me. If you don't drink, you won't get drunk. If you don't get drunk, your life will get different. My life today is full beyond my wildest imagination. I work in a profession that I never wanted to be in, with a group of people I don't even like, doing something I've never wanted to do, and I'm really, really good at it. I'm really good at what I do for a living. If I'd had it my way, I wouldn't have done it. If I'd have seen it coming, God kind of moved me into it while I wasn't paying attention. If I'd have seen it coming, I'd have changed it. I'd have stopped it. But because I wasn't paying attention, God's plan just unfolded around me, and I find myself doing something for a living that I never wanted to do and that I'm really good at. I'm in a relationship that's loving and nurturing and healthy, and I keep hearing in Alcoholics Anonymous how we can't do that. I keep hearing this little thing, we don't have relationships, we take hostages. I want you to know that's not true. Because you taught me how to have relationships. You taught me that if I nurtured the friendship, the rest of it, that God would take care of the rest of it, and that's my experience. I've heard people talk in Alcoholics Anonymous and say it hasn't been necessary for me to drink or use since I walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. I want you to know it's been very necessary for me to drink. It's been incredibly necessary. It's been a sense of emergency. It's been so necessary. It's been overwhelmingly necessary for me to drink. But because the steps work, I haven't drank and I haven't used since the day I walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I never planned to stay this long. I was putting in a little bit of time for court, and then I was out of here. Never planned to stay this long, but because the steps work, I haven't drank and I haven't used since the day I walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're new here tonight, you never have to drink again, whether you want to or not. No matter how bad you want to, you don't have to drink. I wanted to drink more than I wanted to breathe the first year that I was sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. Just about a little over a year ago, my son, who did live with me, who I raised, I'll tell you what, our children's disease, they don't have to rationalize it themselves if they have a parent who will do it for them. I had people telling me that they thought my son was using drugs. I said, oh no, he's been raised in Alcoholics Anonymous. He wouldn't do that. He's tired a lot. He's getting really bad grades because he's just not a student. He's one of those kids who in his 20s is going to realize an education. I mean, I justified his disease. He didn't even need to do it. He just, bopped around. And one night, Friday night, he came home and God spoke. God did it because I couldn't. I absolutely could not. And God said through my mouth to my son, "Are you loaded?" And he said, "No, I'm just tired." And I said, "Well, if you're tired, you should have come home earlier." I said, "I won't have drugs or alcohol in my house, whether they're in your body or in your room. They can't be in my house. And you have to make a choice. You either smoke marijuana or you live in my house." And my son went into his room, and about 10 minutes later, he walked out with his backpack. And he made a choice. And intellectually, I understand that choice because I made that choice over and over and over and over. I have given up everything in order to have one more drink. I intellectually understand that choice. But my heart broke as my son walked out the door because that was the choice he made. And I sat on my couch, 16 years sober, trying to decide if I should drink or kill myself. And I couldn't figure out which one to do. And so I sat on my couch and I tried to decide whether I should drink or kill myself. And after 2 days, I got up off the couch onto my knees. And I said, "God, you take it. I can't do it." And the phone rang, and it was somebody I sponsored, and she was having some problems. And I did the thing that you taught me to do. I said, "I'll meet you in 15 minutes at the coffee shop. We'll have dinner and we'll go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous." Didn't take the pain away. You've always given me the dignity to keep my pain. But you've given me the courage and the strength that I need to choose to continue to recover for one more day. You have always given me the courage and strength. At the end of the meeting, we say, "Keep coming back," and I always say, "Don't go away. It works better. Just don't go away." When I was 4 days sober, an old man told me if I didn't drink, I wouldn't get drunk. If I didn't get drunk, my life would get different, and he didn't lie to me. And the other thing I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, we already heard when Bob read chapter 5, and it's a line in chapter 5 that says, "There is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now." Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.